Welcome to Build Your House Yourself University by BYHYU. I'm your host and fellow student, Michelle Nelson, and together we'll learn the basics of home design and construction and demystify the building process so we can make smart decisions and build quality dream homes with or without a general contractor. Because this month I'll be doing quite a bit of traveling, and I need to complete some organizational tasks for my own home building project, for the next several weeks, we'll feature some of the most popular and most information-packed episodes from the podcast. If you're new to the show, these may be episodes that you've never heard before. And if you've listened to the episodes once, taking another listen can be really beneficial in solidifying your understanding and recall of lots of information that can help you with your new build. You're bound to hear a few things that you missed the first time you listen, or to hear things that you need to be reminded of. So take a listen, and if you've heard the episode before, quiz yourself while you're listening to see how much home building and design knowledge you can remember. And make sure you subscribe to the show so brand new episodes, as soon as they come out, get sent to your podcast library. I hope you'll be patient with me as I take some time to travel, organize, and prepare to get into the nitty-gritty of the construction of my house. Enjoy the best of BYHYU. I'm so excited about today's show because I'm going to be talking about how we can save money on the construction of our homes without compromising comfort or quality. Most people know that the square footage of a house will affect the cost of construction, but many people don't realize how a house is designed and laid out will also affect the bottom line. And since many people are unaware of what design choices we can make to reduce our construction costs, I've compiled a list of 20 money-saving design and layout ideas. The easiest way to save money during construction is to figure out how to reduce costs before construction even begins, during the design and planning phases. The cost to build two houses with the same square footage can vary greatly depending on how the houses are designed and constructed. Great savings can be hidden in small details, and a few dollars saved here and there can add up to thousands of dollars over the course of construction. We'll talk about how we can design our homes to reduce construction costs in a moment, but first, let's define today's pro term. The pro term for today is cantilever. A cantilever is a projecting structure fixed at only one end. Its rigid construction extending horizontally well beyond its vertical support. The use of cantilevers in house design is relatively common, from simple balconies that extend past supporting walls to having entire rooms suspended in the air. The most common cantilever designs, though, extend no more than 2 or so feet beyond a home's wall. I bet you've seen a cantilevered structure on a home before. It's simply a bump out that extends from the side of a house. Cantilevered designs can increase the space in a room without having to expand the home's foundation footprint. If you'd like to see an example of a cantilever, take a look at the show notes, which you can find at BYHYU.com, BYHYU.com. You'll see the link to the website when you tap the cover art of this episode. Now, let's learn how we can save money with smart home design. There are some features and home design layouts that are more economical than others. But despite being more economical, those options can be just as beautiful and functional as the more expensive features. Listen for options that you can incorporate into your home plan that you find both practical and attractive. A common theme that you'll hear today is that simple design is the most economical design. The cheapest house to build has 4 corners and 1 roof pitch. Think of a traditional colonial style home. Those simple lines are classic and budget friendly. Here are some other money saving ideas. Tip number 1, reduce the footprint of the home. The foundation is one of the most expensive parts of construction. So there are significant savings from making the foundation smaller. Instead of building a single-story home that sprawls across your lot, consider a house with 2 or even 3 stories. Not only will that reduce foundation costs, but it will reduce roofing costs as well, and that's another big expense. Building a 2 or 3-story house will allow you to increase your square footage without increasing the size of your foundation and roof. Another way to increase square footage without increasing the home's footprint is to cantilever the walls of a room out just a couple of feet beyond the foundation and wall. The bonus here is that cantilevers add dimension and interest to the sides of your home. Tip number 2, build on a slab foundation, if possible. Slabs are the least expensive concrete foundation. There are different types of slab foundations, and we'll cover that in future episodes. But for now, know that slabs in general are a great way to save money without compromising on strength or stability. Basement foundations may make more sense in cold climates because most homes in cold climates have foundations that begin several feet below grade or below ground. So since they have to dig that far below ground anyway, many people in cold climates decide to put in basement foundations. But remember, you don't necessarily have to finish the interior of the basement, or you can finish it in the future as your budget and schedule allow. One last word about foundations. Foundations with fewer corners are the most affordable. If you can choose a house design with a simple square or rectangular footprint, you'll save money. The more corners and angles your foundation has, the more expensive. Tip number 3, place your house closer to the street, if setback requirements allow. That way, you'll have a shorter and therefore less expensive driveway and less landscaping for the front yard. The bonus here is that you'll have a bigger backyard for your children, grandchildren, and for entertaining. Usually backyards need less landscaping than front yards. Tip number 4, keep the roof simple. A simple front-to-back gable roof is less expensive to build than a complex, multi-pitched, hipped roof. Complex roof lines and lots of gables require more materials and labor. Plus, complex roofs are more expensive in the long run since they are more prone to roof leaks and because repair and replacement costs are more expensive when compared to a simple, not too steep roof. Tip number 5, consider advanced framing techniques, which will decrease the amount of lumber needed to frame your house. We talked about advanced framing last week, so you know what it's time for, right? Pop quiz. True or false? With advanced framing, walls are comprised of 2x6 studs on 16-inch centers. The answer is false. Advanced framing uses 2x6 studs on 24-inch centers. Traditional framing uses 2x4 studs on 16-inch centers. So with advanced framing, you use fewer studs, and that translates to lower lumber costs. And if you're in an area where framing crews are experienced in advanced framing, you should be able to save on labor costs as well. Tip number 6, centralize your plumbing as much as reasonably possible. Plan for spaces with lots of plumbing to be clustered fairly close together and back to back if possible. Areas such as the kitchen, laundry room, and bathrooms should be grouped together as often as possible. This reduces the cost of running costly pipes all over the house. And if you're building a 2-story house, second-floor bathrooms should be stacked above first-floor bathrooms and the kitchen, so plumbing can be connected along the same wall. Tip number 7, eliminate walls by choosing an open concept design. The more walls you eliminate, typically, the more you can save on labor and materials. Occasionally, it will cost you more to build an open room because of the added costs of purchasing and installing structural beams, but usually, fewer walls are cheaper. And the savings are not just on framing materials and labor. You can also save on purchasing and installing drywall, paint, trim work, doors, and electrical wiring. The bonus benefit here is that open floor plans are very much on trend, and they make the house feel larger, so you can actually build smaller without the house feeling too cramped. Tip number 8, simplify room shapes and first and second story floor plan designs. I told you simplicity was a theme here. The most economical rooms are square or rectangular. curved walls, and rooms with odd angles are more expensive. And if you're building a 2 or 3-story house, make sure walls line up between floors. If not, additional beams and other structural elements may be needed to hold everything up. So align your walls as best as you can. Tip number 9, simplify exterior and interior details. Fancy details can quickly raise the cost of your home. What do I mean by fancy details? Well, I mean extensive window and door trim, especially stain grade trim, detailed moldings, unusual window shapes, or oversized or odd-shaped windows, cathedral ceilings, or ornate ceiling details, niches, and built-ins. The more of these things that you include in your house, the more expensive it will be. A note about window trim. If you can't decide whether you want window trim or not, cut it from your plans and from your budget. You can typically save when you forego window trim. And having clean, simple, trimless windows is very much on trend. Tip number 10. Add open shelving and painted cabinets to save money in the kitchen, bathrooms, and laundry rooms. Stain grade cabinets are more expensive than painted cabinets, and obviously traditional cabinetry with doors is far more costly than open shelving. And guess what? Painted cabinets and open shelving are both classic and current. I realize that most people don't want to do all open shelving, but even replacing some of your traditional cabinets with open shelving can save you money. Tip number 11. Okay, I know this is obvious, but don't build rooms that you don't need or won't use. That not only increases your upfront construction costs, but you'll have the added expenses of having to furnish and heat and cool those spaces. Will you really use 5 bedrooms? And do you really need a formal living room, a family room, a bonus room, a sunroom, and a hearth room? Maybe you do, but only if you have a family of 15. Most people don't need that much space. Don't build a space just because that's what everyone else is doing. And remember, you don't have to build a space just because it's on a house plan. You can have the plan modified. I know you've got to consider what's expected for resale, but I don't think future home buyers will hold it against you if you don't have 5 living areas. I'm just saying. Tip number 12. Optimize your design for the use of standard building materials. By designing your rooms with standard dimensions in mind, you can save on construction and disposal costs. And you can also decrease construction time since there will be less measuring and cutting of materials. Many building materials, including dimensional lumber that's used for framing, come in 2-foot increments. If most of your rooms and ceiling heights are designed in multiples of 2 feet, that will accommodate the widest range of building materials from foundation to finishes. Whose idea was it to make rooms 13 feet wide or 15.5 feet long? You may need to use those odd dimensions if you're trying not to exceed a specific square footage, but you might save money on materials and labor if you can reasonably design your room and ceiling height dimensions with multiples of 2 feet. Building materials such as drywall and plywood come in multiples of 4 feet. Standard sheets of drywall, for example, are 4 by 8 feet. So choosing 8-foot ceilings is more affordable than opting for higher ceilings. But if you're like me and have your heart set on higher ceilings, you can ask your drywall guys about ordering longer sheets of drywall for those walls with taller ceiling heights. Those longer sheets can also be used for ceilings. The longer drywall sheets will produce fewer joints, and that should decrease your labor costs. The drywall lengths vary, usually by multiples of 2 feet. So you should be able to get sheets of drywall in 4 by 10 and 4 by 12 sheets. I've also seen some as large as 4 by 16 feet. Tip number 13. Design bedrooms that you plan to carpet with a 12-foot width. So make the rooms 12 by 13 or 12 by 15, for example. Carpet comes in 12-foot rolls, So designing rooms with 12-foot widths makes more sense than having a bedroom that's 11 feet 8 inches or 13 feet wide, for example. Carpet installers will bill you for additional carpeting and seams needed to complete a room. As an aside, tile flooring varies in size by 2-inch increments. Hardwood flooring planks come in different lengths, but in general, the longer the planks, the more expensive the flooring. Tip number 14. Simplify your staircase. Staircases that are straight runs with no landings are the most budget-friendly. The more curves, landings, and direction changes you add, the more expensive. Tip number 15. Thoughtfully consider the number of windows you include in your design. Windows are a big-ticket item, but you'll want to choose the most energy-efficient windows you can afford. Where you should try to reduce costs is by decreasing the number of windows you have. Even if you reduce the number of windows by just a few, that can be a big money saver. Tip number 16. Make sure your HVAC system is properly sized. Purchasing an oversized system can cost you hundreds or thousands of dollars more than having a properly sized HVAC system installed. Don't allow your builder or HVAC contractor to use the old school and inaccurate rule of thumb of 1 ton of air conditioning for every 400 to 500 square feet. Instead, insist on a manual J calculation. You might even seek out an HVAC designer or home energy rater to do the manual J calculation. Remember that the manual J is the first step in designing a heating and cooling system. Time for another pop quiz. Do you remember some of the factors and inputs that are analyzed in the manual J calculation? Well, manual J was the pro term in episode 12, when we talked about energy efficiency and home energy raters. Manual J is a complex set of calculations that takes several features into account. Do you remember any of them? The manual J calculation takes account of the type and the amount of insulation, the thermal characteristics of every wall, window, floor, ceiling, and door, the home's geographic location, its orientation to the sun, how tight the home's envelope is, the amount of duct leakage, and the amount of heat and humidity added by lights, appliances, and each occupant of the home. Any of that sound familiar? I hope so. Tip number 17. Skip the expensive commercial-grade kitchen appliances and go with mid-priced appliances, unless you're a really serious cook. You can save thousands of dollars. Purchasing closeouts, floor models, and scratch and dent models can also reduce costs. Tip number 18. This is a simple one. Opt for shower curtains in most bathrooms instead of glass shower doors. That can save you $1,500 or more. Tip number 19. Consider designing for future upgrades. There are several extras that are not necessary for obtaining a certificate of occupancy. You can add those upgrades over time after you've finished construction. Some of those extras include fireplace surrounds, security camera systems, central vacuum systems, interior basement finishes, wallpaper, patios and decks, swimming pool and hot tub, gas grills, landscaping, paved driveways, solar panels, and crown molding. If you plan on adding some of those extras after you move in, just make sure that your contractors know about your future plans. During construction, have them do the work that would be difficult to impossible to do after your home is complete. Work like running gas lines, plumbing, electrical wiring, and insulation. Those things are fairly inexpensive to add during construction and can wait until you're ready to complete your upgrades. The last tip for today, number 20. Before you have your house plans finalized, start collecting rough estimates and the contractor's cost savings suggestions on preliminary drawings. When you're asking for estimates from potential subcontractors, ask them to look at your plans with a critical eye and make notes about where you could save money without significantly compromising quality and without negatively impacting the work of other subs. If you're going to use a general contractor, you could ask those in the running for your job to do the same thing. Those early estimates and notes can help you modify your plans to save money. There are many ways that we can tweak our home plans to allow us to reduce costs without compromising quality. Hopefully you learned about a few of those tweaks today. Let's see if you did. It's quiz time. Question number 1. What are 2 things that we talked about today that you can do to increase your square footage without increasing the home's footprint? Do you remember? The first thing you can do is to build up instead of out. Instead of spreading all of your square footage over a single-story house with a large foundation, you can add a second or even third story to your home. That way your foundation and roof will be smaller and therefore cheaper without having to lose any square footage. You can also use cantilevers, which are bump outs that extend past the walls of the house about 2 feet or so. Question number 2. Is it better to design room dimensions and ceiling heights in multiples of 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, or 5 feet? The answer is in multiples of 2 feet. This is because most building materials come in standard dimensions that are in multiples of 2 feet. Many materials have standard sizes of 2 feet, 4 feet, or 8 feet. If most of your rooms and ceiling heights are designed in multiples of 2 feet, you will accommodate the widest range of standard building materials from foundation to finishes. This will decrease materials costs, labor costs, disposal costs, and time. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you got some good ideas about what to include and exclude in your house design to get the biggest bang for your buck. Incorporate those features that make the most sense for the form and function of your home. You can head over to BYHYU.com, BYHYU.com, if you'd like to take a look at the show notes. And if you know anyone who's planning on building a house in the near or distant future, why don't you share this episode with them so they can incorporate some of these suggestions into their home design? You can share this episode by text, email, Facebook, or Twitter. Just hit the share icon that's at the bottom left of the screen. Please remember that the purpose of this podcast is simply to educate and inform. It is not a substitute for professional advice. The information that you hear is based only on the opinions, research, and experiences of my guests and myself. That information might be incomplete, and it's subject to change, so it may not apply to your project. In addition, building codes and requirements vary from region to region, so always consult a professional about specific recommendations for your home. Thank you for listening today. I hope you'll come back next week for another episode of Build Your House Yourself University. BYHYU.